This week, we're focusing on how to rebuild your confidence to lead again by planting what I'm calling confidence seeds. Now, yesterday we looked at the confidence seed of creating new habits of winning. Now, today, let's talk about the confidence seed of boundaries. Now, hang with me here because I just may come at this topic from an angle that you weren't expecting. Now, you may be wondering how boundaries can help you rebuild your confidence to lead again. See, being in an extended relationship with a narcissist means that your boundaries were continually chipped away at. And like that drip, drip, drip of water that's just constantly eroding something, it does it to your boundaries too. And as your boundaries softened, probably because you were trying to keep the peace, right? Soon whole sections of your protective boundary fences start falling away. And now you've got some rebuilding to do. You need to recapture what's normal and healthy and what's not. And this is where working with a coach who understands these issues can be very, very helpful. Healthy boundaries are going to flow from those steadfast, proactive convictions within you, within your own heart. Now, if you set boundaries in a reactive posture out of fear or anger, which is what we often do, especially coming out of that narcissistic abuse, we're gonna be determined to set firm boundaries again. Now, no one's going to treat me this way again. I'm not going to let anyone get away with this. I'm not going to tolerate this. We're being reactive. Okay? No, we don't want those things again. But when we are in a reactive posture, we are operating out of fear. We're operating out of anger. Those resulting boundaries we set are not going to be the ones we're looking for. They're going to be weak, unhealthy boundaries. As a matter of fact, you may find that trying to hold those boundaries, those reactive boundaries, you're going to be mentally, emotionally, maybe even physically drained because they're not flowing from the right place. And you're trying to white knuckle your way through it. It leads to you being in a place of hypervigilance, and then you're right back into survival mode again, which is where you don't want to be. Leading from a place of reactive boundaries also makes you vulnerable to being manipulated. You become fear-based in your leadership, and nothing good ever comes from that. And if someone comes along who purposely or inadvertently manipulates you, you're going to be really reactive. So you're not proactive, then you're not just standing on conviction. You're not making sound decisions. You're not being rattled by that. But when you're reactive, when your boundaries are reactive, then all it takes is a poke and they can send you flying in a direction. So that's why it makes you vulnerable to being manipulated. This is not where we want to be. That's not the zone we want you to operate from. The best place to start working on boundaries is within yourself. So you have to ask yourself a few questions like, where am I out of balance? Why am I out of balance? And try to unpack it, get a couple layers deeper to get to the root of it. What's going on? When do you first remember letting your guard down? What happened when you let your guard down? How do you react to situations now? And also ask yourself, what's your self-care been like? Now, you may wonder what self-care's got to do with it, but it's got a lot to do with it. And we're going to focus on this area specifically tomorrow. So I hope you come back tomorrow and we'll catch that one. So I want you to think about, what are you doing that's draining you, but you feel obligated? The have-tos. Challenge that assumption. Is it truly valid? For now, focus your efforts on boundaries in your own self-leadership. And think of these as protective guardrails, keeping the good in and the bad out. You can use them to design how you use your time each day, for example. I talked about this a little bit with Mia yesterday and how I was using Flow Club, those co-working sessions you're probably seeing advertisements about. I used them and then I started hosting them after about 6 months of doing it because I was establishing new habits of winning. And so you can go back and listen to that yesterday. But I've also used those as I went throughout the day I decided the design of my work day because I work for myself. So I've got a lot of control over that. And I had a certain workflow and I found that I wasn't tracking time really well. It would take me a long time to focus, to kind of get into the zone. And it just felt like I was wasting a lot of time. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But I decided that I wanted to hold myself accountable in a very gracious way. And so I started using those co-working sessions to say, here's my template of my day. Now there's wiggle room. in there. I'd schedule breaks and different things, and I'd make adjustments as I went. But I'd go in there and then I'd type in, here's my goals for this session, and I could check them off as I went. So now I was setting boundaries around myself, putting a supportive system in place. And all of a sudden, I started accomplishing so much more. So you can use whatever boundaries you want to put in place on yourself, your own protective guardrails. You can use those to design how you're going to use your time each day, for example. Putting yourself in a healthy accountability partnership like I did with Flow Club, but it can also be with a coach, with a small group. It's going to help to reestablish your self-leadership boundaries. It's that support system to help you do it. And over time, you're going to find renewed strength and renewed ability to trust yourself again, which leads to confidence. So now you're going to have the seed of that habit of winning combined with your boundaries and self-leadership. Those two seeds are going to reinforce each other, right? The scripture says in Matthew 5:37 to let our yes be yes and our no be no. Now, there's a lot that goes into being able to do this with conviction and without guilt. We don't want to say yes out of guilt, right? But boundaries and our self-leadership is a really important part of this equation to get to that place where we can calmly say yes or we can calmly say no, and we can make decisions and we can hold the line on those decisions. And when we become established with boundaries first within ourselves, then we've made a good foundation from which to establish healthy and godly boundaries with others. And that includes any teams that you lead. You'll be able to build this not only within yourself, but you'll be able to build it into your team culture in a way that uplifts and supports everyone. Boundaries aren't just defensive. Boundaries are proactive. Boundaries are a really helpful thing that gets things done. So if you'd like to know more about how this might apply to you, and you're maybe a little bit confused because we're only able to touch on this a little bit with the time we have, then I invite you to reach out to me at hello@AnnetteChesney.com. We can chat a bit about what you're dealing with, and I can point you to some more specific, helpful next steps. All right, so join me tomorrow as we discuss our next seed of confidence, and it's up-leveling your self-care. And no, I'm not talking about just take more bubble baths. We're going to go to a whole new level here when it comes to self-care. So I hope you join me tomorrow for that. Remember to allow yourself the grace to incrementally improve. Focus on becoming just 1% better than you were yesterday. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode to help others if it's helped you. And check out our show description for some additional helpful resources. Remember my email. I'd love for you to reach out. hello@AnnetteChesney.com. Keep going because your best is yet to come. I'll see you tomorrow.